got an Amazon affiliate link that we'll be sharing here in the future, and that just helps us keep the show going. So you're going to make the purchases anyway, so they pay us for you to do that. And so if you'd be willing to help us out there, we'll get you a link here shortly, and probably in the next day or two. And then outside of that, no, we've got some events coming up in January. The SG groups will be going live in January. We've got 4 different groups run by myself. Potentially Mr. Ryan the Lion Morris will be running one of those. Nicole Castillo and Melissa Ross will be running their own SG groups. And so we'll be able to accommodate in different arenas. Our goal is to take you through the 12 journeys and have you experience those on different topics.
We also have a little something coming down the pipeline. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. This is Bort Black Diamond. And so we've got something coming down the pipe with this bad boy, which has amazing healing properties. It's going to be awesome.
I want one.
Well, let's dive in. We've got some incredible guests with us today. We've got Dr. Shyam Seetharaman and Nicole Crowley. Thanks for joining us, both of you. I'm going to dive into Shyam's bio just a little bit, and then we're going to go into your journey and story. And Nicole, we just love having you on. It's really nice. I mean, you had some beauty to this whole thing.
Yeah, we need it bad.
Ryan
Thanks, guys. You're so kind.
Yeah, and you're like sugar to the show. So
she's like pure love to the show. So I'm glad she's here.
Aww. Okay, I'm like gonna cry.
Well, perfect. That's what
we
will
try do. Probably.
People to cry.
Shyam's like, oh boy.
Here we go.
Yeah, we never know where the show's going to go.
No, I'm going to talk about crying.
Perfect.
Oh, there we go.
I do it a lot.
Well, I want to, I'm going to nerd out a little bit on your bio because you're a PhD in psychology, and you specialize in cognition and neuroscience, and that's my language right there. So you've been published in peer-reviewed scientific journals and books, which I've got to tell people that's a huge deal. To get published means that your research is making an impact. And so to not only be published, but to be peer-reviewed is a huge deal in this community. So I know we're going to dive into your world a bit. You've been presented at numerous national and international psychology and neuroscience conferences, and you're a certified health coach, certified life coach, and certified personal trainer through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. So I know we're going to talk a little bit today about dad bods, potentially, as we get through this.
Well, that's just perfect because conveniently.
Yeah, I have one of those.
I can pretend
Welcome
like
to
I have
the
one of those.
Yeah, Nicole's like, I'm on board.
I'm like this tiny.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Shyam, I'm going to call you Shyam through the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for taking the time, and thanks for having me.
Did we miss? I know we missed probably a lot because your bio, it could be pages and pages and books and books. Is there anything you wanted to highlight that I didn't hit on?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, my CV is pages and pages long, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, perfect.
We're glad
and
you're
CV,
here.
Yeah, for those of us in America, that's a resume.
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
What's a CV? Yeah, that's awesome. So let's dive into your journey. We're going to go back in time and really explore. And the reason we do this is we want to give a foundation, kind of like we do with the book, The Giants and the Smalls. There's a journey that each of us takes, and we all have different start points. And our goal with that is to highlight that no matter where you start, just start. And so if we go back in time and look at what life was like growing up for you, can you go into that a little bit? What was your childhood like?
Sure. Yeah. So when I was growing up, it was, so I grew up in a very traditional household. I'm first generation American. So my parents are immigrants from India. And so growing up, it was like growing up in this really traditional household. It was pretty strict. I was actually fortunate compared to some other people that were in my boat, because I had the freedom to like play sports and like have friends of whoever and things like that. But really it was pretty strict. Education was like the number one thing. It was pretty traditional, pretty strict, but I had a happy childhood for the most part. I think it was like we were safe, we were secure, we were happy I say we, me, and my sister. So we were, we grew up pretty happy, but it was really traditional. Like, things like I wasn't dating, like wasn't a thing. I wasn't allowed to date. I wasn't allowed to go to like dances and stuff like that. So it was like pretty like traditional, but
So
I
I'd
can't
wonder
say
on
I had
that.
a bad childhood. What's
You
that?
know, like we all establish our values, kind of our foundational values are called proto values that are handed down from family and culture, kind of being around the people that we develop around. And so they create these foundational values. And I'm wondering if that laid a foundation for you to show up a certain way in your life, or if you've moved away from a lot of those proto values. Can you go into that a little bit?
Well, I think one thing that I've actually coached a couple guys on, and one thing that I've wrestled with for a long time is balancing what morality means, because morality is not necessarily a universal concept.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Morality has a cultural component. Things that, for example, my parents may find immoral, I don't necessarily find immoral.
Yeah.
And vice versa, right? So like I've coached it, like I said, I've coached a couple people on like wrestling with this idea of being in the middle, where I have this cultural background and all these foundational ties to my culture, but I'm American and I'm
Yeah.
trying to like balance these two things. And that's been something that I've been wrestling with like my whole life, is like, how do you split the difference? And one thing that I'm sure we'll get into later is like, you can't make everybody happy. Everybody can't be happy. So in the end, the cliche is, well, you got to make yourself happy and be sure that you're happy and satisfied. And at the end of the day, it's like, can you look yourself in the mirror and say that, yeah, I tried my best. Yes, I'm a moral person. Yes, I'm a good dad. I tried my best anyway, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's interesting. I think, when we look at values and ethics and morals and integrity, and this will come up throughout the show, these are some of the principles that we hit on. Ethics would be kind of the values of the culture, right? Morality would be determined by the culture as well, because an individual might have different morals like you're talking about. Integrity is being in alignment with what you think it should be. And so you have these variations, all value based, right? But we all create them. So initially you might have some proto values handed down from your family that you start with. I grew up in a very religious family, kind of strict religious, where I had some values that I really wrestled with because there was a lot of shame and guilt that came up around that, right? Like I don't feel like I measure up to that. I think of Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett talks about anxiety coming up when we don't feel like we're measuring up to the ideals of others. And that's what I felt most around morality and ethics, right? Is like the way I am, it doesn't fully align with that.
It's interesting you just brought up the word align, because I was going to say, I feel like we need to bring an alignment to that too.
Okay. Yeah.
Because so much of it is like the integrity piece. It's like, well, what are you aligned to? Do you know what you're here to do? Like what energy and frequency and consciousness are you sharing? So that has something to do with it too, because it's all about alignment. Like what's integrity to you specifically, because it's also
I'm gonna
individual.
love this. Yeah. Like what I know about Nicole, you're deeply spiritual. And Dr. Shyam, you're scientific and maybe spiritual. And so bringing these two worlds together is one of my favorite things. It's like, I think more on the scientific research based side.
Sure.
And I have friends like Ryan is super spiritual, but he also sees the scientific.
See, I love science and I love quantum physics. So yeah.
Well,
I
it's
love
interesting
that you
bring
guys
this
love it.
up. Yeah, it's interesting you guys bring this up, and this might be total. If this is total tangent, then just bring me back.
Yeah,
but,
no, tangent on. Yeah,
I talk about a mathematical perspective of life alignment.
Okay,
where you can look at statistical modeling and look at concepts of standard error from the mean, and tie that into a life alignment, aligning your life. And it's like, it's really cool for me and really cool for black and white numbers, mathematical people, because it gives you kind of a black and white perspective on life. And, you know, like I tell my students, especially, it's like, you're going to be surprised how philosophical statistics and math can actually be if you start thinking about it.
There's no way to be just one or the other. And Nicole, I'm sorry, I put that over there on you like you were just strictly spiritual, and you're like,
oh no,
trust
me, I am like, if I could have auras like sprouting from my head right now, I would. Like, if you can't tell from my angel earrings, angel wing earrings.
Well, there is no way to get away from blending the worlds, right? Philosophy exists in science, and science exists in philosophy, and spirituality exists in it all. And it's like, even science has become sort of, in a way, religious. And so I know we're getting off on a tangent here, but I could see how these things can influence our view of the world. And so as you were looking at your life and you have this influence, this religious influence, you know, you don't get to go on dates, you don't go to dances, you don't do things like that. So you have this conflict with morality and what that means to you, and you feel moral in your sense, and your parents might look at that and say that's immoral. And so moving forward in your life, how did that impact your direction with what you've created here?
Yeah, well, I'll just give you a little bit history. So,
yeah,
you know, like you guys touched on it. It was like, felt guilty for a really long time because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. Like, I felt like I was always doing something wrong. And I lived with that for a long time through my 20s, like into my 30s. I still do. Like, you know, everybody's a work in progress. I still do. But, you know, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it right. And I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. And this like surprises people first time I tell them. But so I had an arranged marriage. So I followed what I was supposed to do. So I had met my ex-wife twice. And then we were married the third time we met.
Yeah.
And so at that time I was like, I did it. Like, I did it. I did what you wanted me to do. Like, I'm good now, right? Like, you accept me now, right? Wow. And it was like, it didn't fix it. It didn't fix it. And then I was just like, in my head, I'm like, WTF is going on? I did everything. I did it.
Which we would allow the actual word here, you know. It's like,
what?
Don't hold back. Like,
we'll allow what?
Yeah. We'll allow the what the.
Got it.
You know what's interesting though?
Yeah,
like, I like relate to that because growing up I didn't have an arranged marriage, but the beliefs of my parents and the beliefs of the society and the area and the religion that I grew up in, it hits me hard as you're talking about that we take on those things and think, okay, well, if only I'm this, if only I'm this, if only I'm this. We pile on this stuff and these layers, hoping that it'll somehow make us better or fix us or solve the problems in life, and we'll be happy someday. And then we grow up to, I'm almost 40, or I'm 40. You're almost 40, Nicole, and it's just, it's taken my whole life, 40 years, like, to look back and go, I took on all this other stuff, and I wasn't happy. It was about 2 years ago that I started unpeeling those layers and diving into it, going, what WTF, you know? Like, I did everything you said I should do. I was being that person that you wanted me to be, or that society said I had to be, and it's like
chasing a ghost. It's like chasing a ghost. You'll never get there.
It's also about worthiness and deserving. Like, when we realize that we are worthy and deserving of everything in life by just being us, we don't need to be what the external wants us to be. We don't need to be what our parents want us to be. Who we are is exactly perfect because we are imperfect. When we like embrace that worthiness and deserving, that's where like the magic happens. And it's hard. And just like you said, Ryan, like peeling off the layers, you have to clear the traumas. You have to get rid of the conditioning and programming. There's so much out there that's fighting against us. But once you step into that, like, it's magic.
I'm really curious. A lot of people that have that mental struggle, and they almost think that they have a mental illness, but all they have is a conflict between these value systems that were handed to them and the ones that they're creating on their own. And there's that conflict. It's like, what is correct for me? And a lot of people that go through that mental struggle, I've gone through it. We go into the world of wanting to help others. We go into psychology, we go into therapy, we go into coaching, right? All from our struggles, and finding out through all of it, oh, you're not mentally disabled. I mean, you have some conflict, but as an illness, if any illness were to pass, it would just come and go. You would get a cold and it would stay for a minute and would move on. But we tend to hang on to it like, oh, I've got this thing that can't move on, and it's this conflict. And so how did that move you forward into wanting to study psychology, become a doctor in psychology? Did that influence anything? Am I off?
Well, so before I got into this field, I was an engineer, and so I was really math and science oriented. And so I still am, but I got into psych because I was really interested in emotions and why people process emotions. Yeah. So that was like a long time ago. So that's how I got into it. And then I started doing research as an undergrad, then got into grad school, and I ended up studying fear, stress, memory, stuff like that in graduate school. And so then I got my PhD. So how I got into this fitness nutrition space, this coaching space is, so I did all this. So, right, I got my arranged marriage and had a child. So I have a 7-year-old beautiful little girl. And and then I got divorced, and it was like total surprise, right? I had no idea this was going to happen. And that's like a huge no-no in my culture. You don't do that. That's not a thing. And so that happened. And then my daughter was gone, and I was like devastated, right? And at that time I was really unhealthy, like physically unhealthy. And I looked myself in the mirror and was like, dude, you got two choices. You can go this way, and you're going to go crawl into a bar and never come out, or you're going to go this way and you're going to try and be better. And I chose that way. And that's what I did. I walked into a gym and never looked back. And what I found was that, physical, and I knew all of this scientifically, right? Physical exercise plays a huge role on your mental state. There's intimate brain-body connection. And I've written about all of this. So like I know it already, like the theory of it. But when I started like seeing changes in myself, not only was it physical, it was huge, like emotional and mental. Like I was able to control my anger better. I was able to talk to people better. I was able to process all this trauma that I was going through in a positive way, in a more of a positive way. And then I was just like, man, I want to help other people. And ever since then, I've been on this mission to help others.
I love it. Ryan, we talk about the 12 journeys, and the final journey in the 12 journeys, not the final one, is to give back and to help others. I mean, it seems to be when you find something that works for you, you naturally want to share that with others. And it's from a space of serving. It's not like I'm going to do this so that I can get something from you. It's truly from a space of, look, this really served my life. I want to share it with you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's cool. Do you guys experience it that way? It's just dead silent. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. No, definitely. Yeah.
I know Nicole does. I know.
Oh, yeah. The moment I stepped into my purpose work, I mean, I took on that martyr thing. with my quantum frequency energy healing device, I was sending frequencies 24/7. I wasn't even sleeping. I was helping people. I wasn't charging people. I was the martyr. I was like, I have this amazing tool, but then my own spiritual abilities opened up. And it's like, whenever anybody needed any help, I was there. But yeah, it's not that it's something that society places upon you. It feels right. Like it's a gift that you get from the universe, movement,
right?
And you're to share it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm going to keep us going. I'm going to dive into your world even further now. So you go down the path of nutrition and health, and there is a direct connection. I mean, you create neural pathways when you work out. When there's strength training involved, there's a push to create new neural pathways. And a lot of people used to think that your neural pathways stopped at a certain age. So you just at age 25, it's done and you don't develop anymore. But they're finding now that it never ends. And so I want to nerd out a little bit on the connection with that. Is how did that impact you? So when you started working out and with the research, like what are the changes that occurred?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? So, prior to this point, I had published on diet and brain function. I had published on exercise and brain function. So I had that neurological knowledge. And then, so now when I stepped into this physical fitness space, naturally it was like, okay, let me try and like bring these two things together, because I already have this neurological knowledge. Now let's focus on periphery. So like you touched on, you can look at things like neurogenesis. So neurogenesis is the brain cell mitotic and meiotic process. So cells, this is the basis of brain plasticity, is cells divide and move. And what you find is in animal and human.
Yeah, I know in research, you've got to use operational definitions, because some people watching this are going to think, oh, the mind is plastic. That's weird. Made out of plastic.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like, so if you can give some operational definitions as you go through so that our listeners and viewers can hang.
Yeah. So plasticity is this concept of synaptic plasticity or neuroplasticity refers to our brain's ability to be moldable or changeable with experience and with time. So as you touched on, the brain isn't static. It doesn't just stay the same. Your brain's dynamic. Like it moves, it changes with experience and with time. Like a great example. Here's a great example. There's studies on people with genetic defects that are web-handed. So all their fingers are attached together, and you can do brain scan and look at which areas of their brain are firing to process fingers, and you don't see them firing because their brain doesn't think they have fingers. But you give them a surgery and suddenly they separate their fingers, and your brain's like, oh, you got fingers now. And those areas start to fire.
Interesting.
Right. So that's a great example of how your brain is plastic. It's adaptable to what you're experiencing and what changes you are. Because as soon as your brain's like, oh, you got fingers, those brain areas better start functioning, because now you got fingers, whereas you didn't before. Right. So that's a great example of plasticity.
Can we nerd out a little bit here? I've been really hung on beliefs, and
leans in a little.
I've been reading and researching on beliefs and where they come from, and a belief is it comes from the word crear, to create. It also comes from glauben, which means to hold dear. So it's things that we hold dear. But the beliefs stem from, they're things that we mold from our perceptions. And those perceptions are the things that we grab from the environment. So our senses are constantly pulling in information. There are 40 billion bits of information going on at any given time around you? But your conscious brain can only process about 40 bits or 40 gigs, something small, I'm just going to throw out fake numbers because that's what I do. But the ability to process all that information is really limited by your perceptions. And those perceptions go back to your values. And so this is where I want to nerd out with you, because you talk about plasticity and the ability of the brain to change. And I hear people constantly say, oh, this is just who I am. I can't change, and it goes back to their values that they're holding, the things that are important, which some of those are foundational proto values that they've never changed, like family values and cultural values that they've had conflict with, that they've never moved out of. And that creates their perceptions, which influences their beliefs, which influences their emotions, which influences their actions. And so this is where I want to nerd out and create with you, is how does a person start to shift those values when you're talking about morality and you're talking about, shame and guilt and ethics and these things that come into conflict with those traditional values that maybe you established when you were young but never did anything with?
Yeah, so I think I did a talk on and I'd love to come back if possible later, or maybe we can talk about it today.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I did a talk on neuroscience of habit change.
Yeah.
And so how your brain changes when you form habits. So the first step is you think about, and this is kind of philosophical too, but you think about who you want to be, the kind of person you want to be. What is that vision of yourself in the future? And you go take one step at a time towards that person, keeping in mind that individual you're picturing is the real you. That's the truth. It's not a fake you you're trying to manufacture. That's the truth. That's the true you. And it's a very Buddhist philosophy. Eastern Buddhist philosophy is the search for truth. Your entire life is searching for truth. What's that?
I don't think you can get away from philosophy when it comes to the brain, because it's by philosophy that the brain changes. It's crazy. It's like your thoughts and thinking and actions and words will influence the brain structure.
Yeah. And what's cool is that, like, what's cool is that there's actually a neurological basis for this. So once you start to, at step by step, realize your truth and start implementing those practices in your life, what happens is neurologically there's a shift so there's a structure called the hippocampus. Yeah. So the hippocampus is a medial temporal lobe brain structure that processes effortful, conscious processing, effortful memory. They're called declarative memories. But once you practice something and you build a habit, there's a shift. So the hippocampus actually shifts the responsibility of how to process those tasks to other brain areas. And I can get full into the brain structures and all that if you'd like, but there's a whole different system.
I mean, we talk about it all the time on the show. I nerd out on this stuff. So like the oligodendrocytes, the astrocytes, the glial cells, the hippocampi, there's two of them. And then you go into the neocortex, and that's where you manipulate information. And I think of Einstein and his ability to manipulate information to create the theory of relativity. And we all have that same brain structure, but many of us go around with the belief system that I can't be an Einstein. So that's what shows up in our world.
Yeah. Well, I want to add something too. Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I said I want to add something too, because we're talking about, the values that have been instilled in us, but we're actually born with 7 generations of of conditioning and programming from our ancestors the moment we're brought into creation. So not only do we have the values that are instilled in us as we grow through childhood and our life, but we have that from the very beginning.
Yeah. So like DNA and generational beliefs or your ways of being. Dr. Shyam, what I'm sorry, I can't get away from Dr. Shyam.
He's a doctor right now to me.
Oh, I don't care. I'm not offended.
Yeah.
I'm not offended.
so yeah, how does that influence, or where were you going?
You made a great point. Yeah, no, you made a great point earlier. It's like one thing that so there's this other system of brain structures like the basal ganglia, the striatum that take over, and that's how you're able to process things in autopilot. Like a great example that I use is driving your car. You're driving your car, you pull into your driveway, you put it in park, and you can't even remember how you got there, how you got home. And that's kind of scary because driving is a very complex task. So how did you do it? It's because you're doing it on autopilot. There's structures that are processing it you're not even aware of because you've done it so many times. So like you made a great point and I coach this all the time. It's like people get caught up in being victims of what's called a sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah.
It's a principle in economics. It's a principle in economics. It's a principle in psychology where basically people live in this like all or nothing world where if I can't be 100%, then I'm a failure, first of all. And second of all, it's like, if I can't do it all, then I'm going to do nothing. Yeah. So people will wake up and be like, I slept in, I can't make it for my full 45-minute workout, so I'm going to do nothing. Or people are like, people do this all the time. They eat half the bag of potato chips and they're like, well, I'm this far deep, might as well go all the way and eat the whole thing.
I promise you, everybody looks like bobbleheads right now that's listening. They're all like, mm-hmm.
Yep.
But that's not logical. That's not logical. That obviously half the bag is better than the entire bag, right? People, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You do what you can. You focus. This is what I tell people. It's like, people don't get caught up in what you cannot do. Focus on what is it that I can do right now. What is it that I can do? Okay, I'm at a restaurant. Is the food being prepared ideally how I want it? No. But what can you do? Do they have water? I'm sure they got water. Like, look up, do they have aside vegetables on the menu? I'm sure they do. Is it going to be prepared the way you want? Probably not. But like, focus on what you can do, not what you can't.
Do you think intention is a big piece? Like, as you're grabbing for that bag of potato chips, the intention, like knowing the fried food is bad for you. This is not good for my liver. This is not good for this. The intention that you're going into with, like, when you have a piece of an apple, you're like, I'm so grateful for the vitamins and nutrients that my body's taking in, versus like when you have a bag of potato chips, you can't be like, I'm so grateful for the fried crap that's going into my body. Like, do you think intention is a piece to this?
Yeah, just like awareness and cognizance makes a huge difference. And, you know, the other thing is, I tell people, they'll call me and be like, dude, I just ate a bunch of chips and I feel like crap. And I'm just like, first of all, it's okay to feel that way. I understand how you feel. It's okay. But it's all right. Let's just move on. Just move on. It's okay. And it's like, I don't believe in deprivation anyways. So what I work on with people is, wherever you're at, be cognizant, be aware of what you're doing. As soon as you're aware, it translates to like every part of your life. Now I tell people this all the time: be a human, be a person. Who are you? You're a human. You're a human for a reason. You have a heart, you have a soul, you're able to process things. You're not a wild animal in the forest who just killed some prey and you don't know where your next meal is coming from. That's
you
not
wake
true.
up.
Be a person. Yeah. Just be a person, be aware of what you're doing.
These I've got this comment up that I'll post there: placebos, nocebos, and beliefs. You know, I think they're all the same. So placebos, nocebos, and beliefs are the same thing, because that's where you start to feel emotion from. So a doctor comes in with a white jacket and he tells you that the sugar pill is going to cure you or fix you, and you believe it. It does. And even if you knew it was a sugar pill, but he told you that it would fix you, it would fix you, right? And same on a nocebo on the other end is damaging, right? It causes harm. So if somebody says something's going to cause harm and they believe it will, then it does. And so going into the idea, Nicole, of how a nocebo like that, of these chips are going to cause harm to my body, they would literally cause harm to the body because that's what you believe. Mm-hmm. Can you go into that and the neurobiology of that?
Oh gosh, you're gonna love this. So you might have heard of this already, but so there's this body of literature called voodoo death. So it's people that have this strong belief in voodoo, and there's like subcultures that have strong belief in curses and voodoo and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and you get these people who have been cursed to death. Their leader, whoever, I curse you to die. And a lot of these people, they drop dead.
Wow.
Because
they believe it.
One could argue the curse didn't do anything, but if you believe it does, it's so stressful on your body, breaks your immune system down, they drop dead.
Yeah.
It's like, tells you how powerful your brain is. If you believe something is true and you believe it strongly, you can twist it and make it true. And so if that's true for the negative stuff, it's got to be true the other way.
I was just about to say that. I was like, how beautiful is it then with that awareness? We're like, okay, awesome. Now I can become my highest self because I can believe in myself and bring myself there. And then, like you said, Shyam, like taking that next step, that little step. It's like that song in Frozen 2, like taking the next step, the next right step, right? It's like that is where it's so beautiful.
I have a Frozen bracelet on. It says "Let it go."
Yeah.
Awesome. So
my whole catchphrase for dad bod brain coaching is 1 step, 1 rep, 1 bite, 1 thought at a time.
I love that.
It doesn't happen all at once.
Does it say that in the white underneath?
Yeah.
Like, are those words there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Oh, so cool.
You know what I'm grateful for is that it doesn't happen instantly, because we would be in a bad place if because we have so many thoughts and emotions every single day. If it happened like that, that would be tough. That would be crazy.
Man, it's time to introduce a word.
Ready,
right?
steady, spaghetti, Nick.
Ready, fractals. I mean, it's
his favorite word.
Because it's simple steps repeated create complexity, like Mandelbrot teaches in math. And you're essentially, when you create 1 step and the next day looks like the last day, it's not, because you're expanding and growing. And so it can't help but create a new trajectory for your life. And so that's why we run our lives on a fractal model. We build our brains on a fractal model. We create behaviors on a fractal model. It's all small steps, 1 step at a time, expanding outward creates complexity.
Yeah. Shyam, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Where you say, that you take 1 step, next step to who you want to be. What do you think about how Dr. Joe Dispenza speaks about that our highest self, our future self, already exists, and it's actually the frequencies that are being sent back to our present self of where we're supposed to be.
I love
that. So I do a talk on that topic. Relating that to mirror neuron system.
Okay.
So that, this is like the blending of science and philosophy. It's like this beautiful thing, right? And so I draw it back to mirror neurons. So mirror neurons are the subset of motor cortex, and mirror neurons will fire. So, for example, if me and Ryan are in the park, like throwing the ball, let's say it's a baseball. So my ability.
That's what I throw.
Oh, cool. Me too. So my ability to look at Ryan across
throw
the
my
park,
back out. That's all I throw. But
I duck.
Keep going.
I duck from the ball.
Yeah.
And then like aim and fire the ball to him. That takes a lot of integration, right? Sensory integration, synapsing with motor cortex for me to get the ball to him. But what's amazing is if I watch someone else throw a ball, a subset of my motor cortex also fires.
Yep.
Which is amazing, because that is saying that your brain is like suspending reality, and you're putting yourself in another person's shoes and pretending that you're doing it. So it creates this very uniquely human ability. Well, there's evidence that other animals may do this, is to learn via observation. Just by looking at another member of our species, we're able to learn things. And other animals can't do it. Like the comparison is like, look at like a polar bear. So a polar bear took millions of years to develop that coat to survive that climate. But you got an ancient human child that watches their father kill a polar bear and make a coat out of it. And so the thing it took the polar bear millions of years to learn, a child learns it in 2 minutes just by watching his dad kill the bear and make a coat out of it.
I see Nick over there.
He's just like, my gears are going.
He's like.
I'm thinking of.
Are you getting hot over there too, Nick?
Oh, geez, man.
Whew, this is amazing.
So then, like what Nicole was saying, so you can relate that system to this whole topic of manifestation, because if you can imagine your future self and how you want to be and how you want to behave and how you want to talk and how you want to act and all this stuff, how you want to feel, then your brain is already doing it neurologically.
Yeah,
I'm of the mirror neuron system.
I'm a testimonial of that. I don't want to make this all about me, but just really quickly. Hit by a drunk driver, in rehab for my back for 3.5 years, told by 5 doctors that I wouldn't walk again. And because I believed that was not my life, I am where I am today.
Okay, so
Wow.
I'm gonna take us a step
Her
further.
story is incredible too, by the way. Sorry, Nick, I'm interrupting
no,
here
you're
because
good.
if
Do
you
it.
have a chance to go back, you definitely need to go back and watch Wake Up with Giants TV with Nicole Crowley because
Yeah.
it's amazing.
If you don't interrupt on this show, you're not going to get a say. It's because we'll just keep going. So it's perfect. But okay, so the research that they're doing now on quantum entanglement, Rupert Sheldrake. If you haven't followed him, Rupert Sheldrake is one of the originals on the connection between humans and pets. And he did a research study where they would video the dogs and they would have the humans over at their jobs or whatever. They would set the intention to go home. The dogs would come to the window. They'd record it. The dogs would come to the window at the moment they made the intention to come home. And there was that connection between the human and the dog that it would come together. As a possibility, if time is relative, as Einstein says, and there's quantum entanglement between you and every version of you, then as a possibility, it would make sense that your future self is already created and that entanglement is creating those changes within you. You know, you talk about the mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are simply reflecting back what they see in the environment and mimicking it. And so as a possibility, there's a lot we don't know about the brain and potential, especially when it comes to physics, that they're just starting to research that is phenomenal. It's mind-blowing. And you can't get away from physics when you go into the biology, because the cells are made of electrons and protons, and you know, that you break that down even further, you got photons and the basis for life. But what comes up as you hear that? I mean, can you share some of your thoughts?
Yeah, what struck me is what you're talking about is empathy. Empathy is an emotion. So your ability to feel for somebody. I feel you. I hear you. I feel you. I literally feel you.
Yeah.
Right? That's what being empathic is. I'm able to imagine how I'd feel if I was in your shoes. So I feel you. So like, you know, there's studies, really interesting studies on, you have caregivers of people with illnesses, and you can look at brain function, and people who are caregivers of loved ones with illnesses, their pain areas light up. They're physically feeling pain. They're physically feeling what their loved one is going through, right? That's like the ultimate empathic response. I like literally feel you. And so we can tie this to like this philosophical thing that we're all connected. We're all connected. And the only thing that separates me from you is my skin and, you know, my muscles. Other than that, like, we're all connected.
Okay, so I got to dive back into the fractal pattern of the body, because the body is designed like an antenna. There was a guy that he was struggling to get certain signals, so he bent wire in a certain way to get more signals, and he did it in the shape of a snowflake, kind of a pyramid shape. And not only was he able to pull in radio signals, he pulled in every signal that was possible. And now they're using that in cell phones. And so the antenna that they have in cell phones is the same antenna that this guy invented to try and get a better tune. Our bodies are designed in that pattern where we have neurons and blood vessels and circulatory systems that are designed like an antenna. And so we are literally receiving and broadcasting constantly. You know, you look at perception. Perception is that sense of receiving and taking in what we deem to be important. So this goes back to the values. You only take in as far as the signals. You're not watching every channel on Netflix. I go to Netflix and look for a movie, and I can't make a decision because there's too many options. It's like going to Cheesecake Factory. So we have to narrow it down based on what we hold as important, which goes back to our values. And so we're constantly broadcasting out what we hold as valuable, and we're receiving in what we hold as valuable. And then we have these nocebos and placebos that we act on based on those things that we're taking in. And that creates our reality. And so our body supports that, it automates that. It says, this is important to you. I got your back. It doesn't care. It's like, you think that's important? I'm going to go ahead and create some myelination.
Myelin. Yeah.
Yeah. The oligodendrocytes come in and support, and they create the myelin sheath around the neural axon. And then that speeds up the process. So like what you're talking about, where you don't even know that you're doing it, it becomes unconscious. That's a habit. It supports you in that. It doesn't care what it is. You want to be good at being bad. It will support you in that. Just, yeah, I don't know what comes up as you hear that.
Well, you know, one thing that comes up when I coach people is like people, I call it inner child rebellion syndrome, where people want to be bad. Like people want to be bad, and being good all the time is boring.
True. 100%.
Like it just is. Like being good all the time is boring. Like you want to be bad. So I help people like generate a menu, generate a list of ways they could be bad without totally like going against their goals. So if you feel like being bad, you're just going to go to this menu and hit one of those things without, and these are things that are not going to hurt anyone or whatever. But like, you know, I got guys like, you know, playing pranks on their wives or like, like playing pranks on their kids or like, you know, whatever.
For like the OCD type, they're like, they've got this like nicely organized closet. Their shoes are perfect, and you go and mess up a shoe.
Oh my god! Okay,
so
this
bad.
is like
Nicole face.
So bad.
I'm standing up for wives everywhere.
This just reminded me of this. This just reminded me of this. I was on a first date once, and she gets up to go use a restroom or whatever they do, and then you come back, and when in the interim, I like took her stuff and moved it around the table. Yeah, and then she comes back, and then I was like, okay, your job is I want to see how well you pay attention.
Oh, I like that.
See like how you process things. Tell me what's different. Like, what did I switch?
Be like
on the table.
Nothing. I got nothing.
Take the silverware and move it on this side. Or like,
I have no idea.
Yeah. I like that. Amazing. I like that you were actually trying to recognize like how her brain works, and you weren't just trying to be a total jackpot.
You're like, look, you're gonna have to take this personality test before we can continue.
Yeah.
Before you can order.
Going back to perception, it's like, how are they gonna view it? That kind of says something. Like, are they gonna like, laugh, think it's interesting, think that I'm a jerk? Like, how are they gonna view it? You know.
We have different views right here. I mean, it comes up right here in this conversation is, Nicole, immediately your values came up and immediately your perception around that came up, and there was an immediate judgment around that. And then that judgment shifted as soon as you got more information. And so you shifted that judgment, and then that changed the emotions, which.
Well, it wasn't a judgment. I just imagined that there wasn't a date too.
No judgment.
Correct.
But so going back to your journey around all of this, as people look at this, it really started, you had these foundational values that were handed to you by your family that created conflict because you did all the things. And then there was this conflict. So you start pursuing, instead of engineering, which is phenomenal when you tie that to psychology, because now you're engineering psychology and you're taking your fundamental beliefs, your philosophies, and tying it up into all of it, which gives this just amazing artwork of a perception of the world. And so when people sit with you, they get to have this experience. And Nicole, it's the same for you, and Ryan, it's the same for you. We all have these distinct ways of viewing the world that if somebody were to sit with us, they couldn't help but see it differently. And it opens up possibilities, Shyam, for you to be a different human, to create a new value system. Because my belief is that values come from experience, and experience comes from what we give meaning to. So as we have some event in the environment, we give meaning to that and we tie it into our experience, it becomes our value system. And so when we're born, we don't have anything. So our family gives us that. Most of our brain development happens after birth. So that's handed to us from their experiences and their generational experiences. And then that's what we operate from, because that's what they told us was the truth. And then we have other experiences around that, and we evolve those so they become different. And there's going to be some conflict. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you one really profound thing that I've learned that I try and help people with is, like, I grew up with this philosophy of not accepting praise, but accepting criticism. Like you're supposed to accept criticism and deflect praise.
Oh.
And so I have, like, historically, I've had a really hard time accepting praise. But now, and also like whenever like I talk about historically, whenever I talk about myself, I feel like I'm this arrogant like prick. Like I'm not supposed to be doing that. But now it's like I've changed so much. My philosophy has changed. My sense of what's right has changed. That it's like I've come to realize that being selfish is necessary. You got to be selfish on some level. You can't give all the time, because if you're not taking care of yourself, then what part of you are you actually giving to others? So you got to take care of yourself first. And then I tell people, I'm like, listen, dude, if somebody says something nice to you, you don't be a dick about it, but you accept it. You say, thank you. I really appreciate it. And you own it because you deserve it. Huh?
You're reparenting. I mean, you're the parent to your child that never developed, right? In those ways that you
deserve to feel good. It's okay to feel good.
That's a big piece of the deserving. Yeah. So many people feel, I mean, from childhood, you have to behave this way to have my love. You have to do this to get this. You have to do, it's all ingrained in us. And so we feel like we're not deserving of receiving what other people have for us.
Right.
Yeah. I think we could go on forever. We've already gone 50 minutes. It's like, this is too short. We need to go a little longer on the show today. Unless everybody has to go, and I'll stay. But
Nick just sits on here for
the thinking around it, because I think where we get hung up is we have a reaction to a situation, and then we don't really dive into, wow, why did that come about? And there's an opportunity there that when you have that reaction, to look at the emotion that came up. Every emotion is tied to a thought. So if you can find the thought that triggered that emotion, you can find the beliefs that you're holding on to, and you can find the perceptions that you have, which will lead you back to the value system, which, like what you're saying, is when you teach yourself a new way of being, like, dude, don't be a dick. It creates a new experience around that event. It's like, hey, it's cool, it happened, but next time moving forward, let's try this instead. So that becomes your new foundational value system. And it's always evolving. It's not like your values, some are constant, but for the most part, they're evolving with you. And you can't help, like you said, you can't help, but when you work on yourself, it impacts others. And in a positive way, if that's the direction you go, or a negative way, it doesn't matter. However you influence, you have affect, and that influences other people's attitudes, and it can have an impact on them, for the good or bad. Because like you said, we have mirror neurons. If I feel your emotion and you're negative and you're coming at me, I'm going to feel some negative emotion, unless I'm so stable in my attitude that your emotion doesn't have any impact on me.
Well, I'm really glad you brought this up, because one thing I take people through is something called emotional brain training.
Yeah.
So like what's great about my program and how I help people is, like, I'll set up your workout, and then we're going to do some mental stuff too. So I take people through emotional brain training, which is kind of what you're saying, is like, especially like a lot of like guys. That's why I'm focusing on guys, especially dads, is like, we're kind of trained historically anyway to suck it up. Like, you don't, emotions is not a thing. It wasn't for me. Yeah. It's like, what emotions? What are you talking about? You just go do it. Like, you suck it up and you go do it. You just get it done. Yeah. But that's not healthy. So I help dads, like, how are you actually feeling? How are you feeling? Let's record it. And it's possible to feel many things at the same time. It's possible to feel happy and angry simultaneously. Right. And so, like, how do you feel? So I get people to, like, really be introspective and be like, okay, how do you feel? Write them down. Why do you feel that way? What's the source of those feelings, those emotions? And then we're going to help prioritize those emotions into reasonable and unreasonable. So what I mean by that is, this is something reasonable I should be feeling because it directly impacts my goals and who I want to be. And I found that a lot of things are unreasonable, where it's like, this has no impact on anything. Like, I went to the grocery store and the checkout lady gave me a mean look. Well, does that really impact? First of all, did she really, or was that just the way
It's a
you
story,
perceived,
right?
Yeah.
right? And like, even if she did, it's like, does that really impact like who you are and who you want to be? Maybe, but maybe not.
Only
Well, I
if you
was
want
told
it to
as a,
be, only if you allow it.
if you allow it, right? You know,
Yeah.
one of the things I was told is don't be a crybaby. And now I
Mm.
cry all the time. You know,
Yeah.
can you talk about the benefit of crying?
Yeah, it's healthy, right? Like what I tell people is it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to express that you feel bad, because I found, like, especially guys, they get caught up in this thing where it's like, I'm not supposed to feel bad, and now I feel bad because I feel bad, and then I feel weak because I feel bad because I want to feel bad, and then it's like this freaking snowball that never gets broken. It's like a blood clot. It's like this blood clot that starts getting bigger. And if you don't address it, if you don't express it, that clot just gonna get bigger, and it's not
It's
good.
going to get bigger, and then it's going to actually manifest as pain or dis-ease in your body. Like, that's what people don't realize. Like, working out, eating right, mindset, like it's going to help your overall well-being.
Yeah, correct.
You talked about how you can't make everyone happy towards the beginning of the show. Before we zip out of here in a little bit, could you go back to that too, and what your thoughts were on that?
Yeah, it's like chasing a ghost. You gotta stop chasing ghosts. Where it's like, you know, for me, it was like my family. It's like whatever I do is just not enough. Well, you just gotta like be at peace with that. Well, that's okay, because it's enough for me. It's enough for me, and I'm okay with it. I can sleep at night. I know that I'm doing the best that I can, and that's all that matters. That's all I can do. I tell people too, it's like going back to sunk cost fallacy and that kind of stuff. You live your life 80%. It's 80%. You can never be 100%. If you're 100%, you'll become exhausted. It's not a sustainable way to live. If you're doing what you are set out to do 80% of the time, like if you're on point, was what I'm trying to say, 80% of the time, then that's it. The other 20% is for you to make mistakes and like make error. And if you make a mistake or if you fall off, you're just like, all right, that's my 20%. Let's move on. And I'm still good.
That's beautiful. We talk about the sun, only a billionth of the sun's energy hits the earth, but it's enough to make an impact. But it's constantly shining, but it's only a small percentage that actually pays off, and it's efficient. Sun could burn for millions of years, billions of years, because it's efficient. And with our bodies, if we run efficiently, like you're saying, just one thing, one push up, one sit up, one jumping jack, one new change in behavior is enough to sustain. It's easy to sustain, but also over time it compounds, it expands, and there's no way you can get away from growth if you'll do that. So I think that's beautiful. I look at your evolution from where your start point was to develop in a culture to do all the things, to grow to that point, to evolve to where you're starting to have new experiences that feed back into that system. And it's constantly a feedback loop, and it feeds back in and evolves. And then you have a new perception and a new belief and a new experience. And then that feeds back in. Who you are today is completely different, even though there's hints of, oh yeah, I know Shyam. He looks familiar, but you don't know Shyam. You know what I mean? Like, who you are today is a completely different person from who you are when you started.
And that can be scary, right? That's scary for people to build a new identity, because you're used to like living up to this person that you used to be. Now you're like not that person anymore, and people are like, what? But it's scary to build a new identity. And like kind of something you guys touched on earlier that I was thinking about is like, your brain sometimes got to catch up with your body, because your brain used to thinking a certain way for so long, and now you don't have to think that way anymore. So it takes some time sometimes for your brain to catch up to your body. You know, it's like I still like find myself like feeling like I'm overweight because I've spent my entire life being overweight, and I have to catch myself and be like, you're not like that anymore. You know, it's okay. Like you can go like try that shirt on. It's all right. You're not going to be totally traumatized by like, you know what I mean? That just like little stuff like that.
Yeah. And in regards to, you know, choosing to be out of the comfort, I mean, I always say there's no growth in comfort. There's growth in discomfort. Like you have to step into the fear to get to the next level. So
I love that. Yeah. You have courage. Are you guys good to go for a few more minutes here?
Yeah.
I want to share, you know, like from our book, we have our 12 journeys. I want to go through these real quick, just briefly what they are. And then Shyam and Nicole, I want to hear your thoughts around these, how these would apply to our viewers. And so we start our journeys with unconsciousness because you have automatic behaviors that you're not aware of, and there's nothing to do there. When you're unconscious, you're unconscious. But the next stage is awareness. As soon as you become aware, then you can start to change things. And then the third step is acceptance. Well, actually, we went to grief first because grief is the sadness about what should be and what is, which leads to acceptance. And then once you go into acceptance, then you get this space of gratitude for what remains or what is possible. And then you go into uncertainty, which when nothing is certain, everything is possible, which opens you up to vision, like you talked about vision. And you create a vision of the future or yourself as you'd like it or as you are, and you're going to evolve into that. So you move into surrender of letting go how that happens and nurturing it, which means that you take those small steps, one here, one there, daily to create it, which moves you into trying to stay in a space of feeling good and from there giving back. And so those are the 12 journeys that we take people through in our programs. And so as you hear those, when you go from unconsciousness to awareness to grief to acceptance to gratitude, some would say instead of grief, mourning. When you go into mourning, you go to gratitude, uncertainty, vision, surrender, nurturing, feeling good, and giving back. What do you hear in that for what you guys are creating? And whoever wants to go can go. Like,
I feel like I need to write all this down.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I guess I'll go.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I get them in the wrong order, sorry. But
it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in general, especially from the unconscious to the aware and then the grief or the mourning, it's like when you live a specific way, when you're kind of stagnant, when you're not truly like vibrating at your highest frequency, and then you discover the truth, you discover that there is conditioning and programming, that there are other ways that you can step into higher levels of being. There's a mourning of that reality that you knew to be true. So you do have to go through that. And then after that is gratitude, or what's after mourning?
Acceptance.
Okay. So yes, then you accept the truth that this reality is your choice. You have the power. And in that, there's actually a lot of fear, because then it's like, okay, so if it's my power, what if I make the wrong decision? What if I take the wrong path? What if this decision takes me along this path, but I was really intended for this path? But then you have to realize like all of it is your path. And then what was after acceptance? Gratitude?
So gratitude, and then uncertainty, and then vision.
Okay. So gratitude is huge for me. That's like what completely changed my life. That's what I help a lot of my clients with. It's all about law of attraction and gratitude. And just really, I did a recent thing about how we're grateful externally for things. We're so grateful for what's in our life, but do we ever really truly thank ourselves? Like we should be like, thank you so much for this beautiful day, this beautiful sun. But then it's like, thank you for being open to receiving. Thank you for choosing to go outside. Thank you. Like you bring it back to you. You bring the love back to you, the gratitude back to you, because we are the microcosm and the macrocosm. Everything is interconnected, quantum entanglement, however we want to perceive it.
Perfect.
And then we go into, from gratitude, it was
uncertainty.
And it was, okay. So then there's uncertainty because there are these external factors, there are these opinions, there is the media, there's all of these other things. And there's this world that's kind of, I don't want to say stuck, but they're comfortable and they're used to the way that they like to be. They don't want that. They don't want to experience fear to get to that next level, to truly become their highest self. And so that's where it's just, what was it before vision?
Uncertainty. So everything.
Yeah. So that's where the uncertainty comes in too, because you're like, you're firm, you're realizing, okay, I can become this. I can take these steps. This is my creation. I have this creation ability. But then you're like, oh, but everybody else is telling me all these other things. But then you step through it, you step through the fear, and that's when vision, that's when inspiration, that's when insight comes in. That's where you're like connected to the trees, you're connected to the messages from the divine. Like you step into your abilities in every single way. And that of course leads to giving, because I always say, like, you can't give from an empty cup. You always give from a state of overflow. So when you bring so much love to yourself, you bring yourself to recognizing the signs, the insight, the inspiration to creating. Well, you're constantly, your cup is overflowing. So just in you being in existence, your consciousness and your frequency is going to other people and raising their frequency and their consciousness, in addition to what you are going to do, because you feel so amazing and so deserving and worthy of everything in your life. So you want everybody else to feel that way.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Shyam? What did you see?
Just a couple of quick, just a couple of quick things. I think it kind of just all those steps draw back into things that I've been talking about before, like earlier, things like being conscious and being aware, just being aware of what you're doing. What are you doing? How am I reacting to this person right now? What are the words coming out of my mouth? How am I listening to what you are telling me? What muscle is moving this weight right now? Right? It's mind-body connection. Just so when you are cognizant and aware of what you're doing, that's like a huge step. So it's a movement, and that it draws back into what you're saying. It's a movement from living in chaos to living with a life of purpose, doing things purposefully and intentionally. And it's like, you look at child development, and like a huge milestone in child development is when they shift from being random to being intentional. And if you're a parent, which I am, that moment that happens where your baby rolls over, that's like this monumental moment. It's like the first time my daughter rolled over, it's like started crying, because I'm like, you didn't do that by accident. You wanted to roll over simply because you wanted to, for no other reason, and you did it by yourself. That's like the moment I'm like, holy crap, this is going to be a person. This is not a blob. This is going to be a human being. Right? It's like when you shift from being intentional and purposeful, it's like it just translates and opens up this whole thing. And then once you realize that you're in control. The situation doesn't control you, you control it. You control how your identity, who you want to be. You don't have to be that, because I'll tell you, like, my identity forever was I could outdrink anybody. I could drink anybody under the table. That was like my identity. So when I rolled up, everyone was like, oh, Shyam's here, like, watch what he can do. And I wanted to live up to it. Like, it's like weird. I'm like, I have to live up to this now. And now I'm not that anymore. And it's like, it's scary. Like, for a long time, it's like weird. It's like scary. People are like, you okay, dude? Like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. This is just who I am now. And I found that if people love you and care for you, then they're not going to go away. Like, they're not going to ditch you just like that. They'll support you.
Huh. Ryan, what thoughts do you have, man? Got you on mute. I'm sure that was powerful.
It was. That's it.
That was it. Thanks, guys.
Here's the thing: is I was sitting here thinking about just how powerful those messages are, and sometimes the brain and trying to protect us, and our just society and culture and all these things have a way of complicating stuff. Just complicating the shit out of stuff. It gets messy sometimes. If we can go inside and remember who we really are and why we were created, and that we were created with purpose. This is a freaking, this right here is a freaking miracle. We're floating through space at spinning around in circles on a rock. Like, it's insanely amazing that we exist. And it's fascinating to learn and understand the brain and the heart and consciousness and science and all of the things. But deep down in the core, when you remember who you are and your value.
Think about this, Ryan. What is the if you just look at mathematically, what is the probability of any of us being born human? What's the probability? It's impossible to be a person. Impossible. If we compare every living thing on Earth, the likelihood of you being human is so ridiculously impossible. It's like makes you lose sleep if you think about it too much. And then you're like, well, why am I human? How come I wasn't born a cockroach or a mosquito or, whatever?
Cute bunny.
Why do I get to be human and other animals don't? And then it like stems to things like, well, maybe there's a reason why I'm human, because I have some purpose as a person that I wouldn't be able to accomplish if I had been born a mosquito or whatever.
Exactly. And I think that as you remember that and think about it, that's the coolest thing to think, like, to have science to explain what some of the things that maybe you don't know about, and you start proving that. But then the other side of that coin is what you can't see, what you feel, and what you become to know, and then the way you be. There's some amazing books. I listed some of them there. I'd love to have you back on. And Nicole, I mean, this conversation could we could dive down tons of different tangents, or fractals, as Nick would call them. And I think that there's value in that. There's so much value, but the main message of this is, is that you're worthy, you're enough, that you matter, you're a giant already, that you have everything inside of you. We just need to help you believe and pull it out, and science can help do that, and love can help do that as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that's the beauty of this message, is that we're all speaking the same language. But what gets in the way, I think, at times is that our perceptions and beliefs around it say, well, you're not speaking my language. But if we just listen, we all said the same thing. And we just do it in different ways, but we're all growing and developing and really trying to work through our beliefs and value systems the same way. I mean, it's no different. Some of us like the research to believe, others believe in magic, and that is enough for them to believe. So whatever works for you to believe, then use that, because it puts you in that space of placebo, nocebo belief system that creates. It's like, yeah, just do it. Just do it. There's no wrong way to do it.
I love it.
Shyam, what other thoughts? Do you have any final thoughts? And I appreciate you staying on here for a minute.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, very insightful. I really appreciate it. Yeah, no, I think it's like one important thing to realize is you don't first of all, it's like your chapter is different than everyone else's chapter. If you start comparing yourself to others, it's going to drive you nuts. Yeah, so you do what you can on this day. You do your best for you on this day. Like, it takes a little bit of swallowing your pride, swallowing your ego, right? You're going to take that first step. You're going to take one step today. And my motto is beat yesterday. All you're going to do today is try and beat yesterday by a fraction. And if you consistently beat yesterday, before you know it, you're going to make a ton of progress. And if you had a crappy day today, then tomorrow all you're going to do is try and beat it. And so it's just a continuous process of beating yesterday.
I love it. Yeah. Any other thoughts, guys?
That was so beautiful. I just wanted to say something really quick about the language thing, because you brought that up. And I actually recently was speaking about this. It's like language is such a divider. And I'm going to bring us to the movie Arrival, where they finally discover like that the gift from these aliens is their language. And then they question, they're like, once I learn how to speak in this language, am I going to start thinking in this language? And it's like cultures are so divided because you can't even communicate with each other. You can't learn the stories from one another. And that ties into like you seeing yourself as divided from others when we're all exactly the same. We all have this beautiful magic within us and this power, this divinity, I will say, this creation ability. And we see other people doing it. We see other people achieving goals. We're like, I want to be like them. But when you realize every single person has that ability, every single person, nobody's different in that way. Like that's so powerful.
Nicole, maybe me and you should start our own show because
I've been told to do a podcast, so let's chat.
Because there's like, okay, I don't want to start a whole different topic here, but
I know. We could be on for like 5 hours.
We might wrap this show and then come back to the after show, and
I know, right?
Let's do that.
But like really quick, because you mentioned it, this is beautiful, right? There's the study on children in Nicaragua, deaf children in Nicaragua. And apparently there's no sign language in Nicaragua. There's no such thing as Nicaraguan sign language. So they brought all these deaf kids from Nicaragua to one location and they developed their own language. Like language just like flourished, right? So it tells you that we're born to be connected to one another and to communicate, right? They just made a new language because they were with people in their same boat.
Guys, I'm going to end the show, but we're not ending the show. So if you're catching this on social media or YouTube, you want to hang to the end to the bonus part, but we'll go ahead and wrap up this section. Just want to let everybody know, thank you for the comments. Thank you for being a part of this. If you need to go, you can. If you want to hang on with us for a minute, we're going to do that. Remember, you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're right on time. I mean, that's the biggest thing is your timing is perfect. And so thank you for being a part of this journey. We will see you on the next episode.
Love you too.
Thanks, guys.
All right, dude, here we go. So let's keep
still live
out
on
if
socials.
You want.
Nice. Awesome.
Wait, what's going on?
We're still live on socials.
Okay.
Just for a minute more.
Yeah. So, man, the idea around languaging, it's how much could we open up if we just slow down and just learn the language of others? I think in relationship, that's fresh for me around relationship is the idea that there are so many differences between just two people. And being able to hold space for the differences in those two people and the differences in the way of being, the way of speaking, the way of believing, like all these differences that come together, and then you come together and there's a creation in that, right?
And it's the awareness. It's kind of like that book, Languages of Love.
Yeah.
It's like when you're aware that the other person, the way that they love is by giving gifts, but that's not the way that you do. It's yours is like sharing time, right? So then you see it as because you're not getting time from them, you see them as not presenting love to you, but in actuality, the gifts they're giving you shows love to them. So when you have that awareness, that's where that's where it makes sense. It's like, oh, I am receiving love, but because I didn't know that one piece, I didn't see how they were recognizing this, Yeah,
it's cognitive mapping. So that what you just described is cognitive mapping. It's like cognitive mapping is where you're going to ask follow-up questions to get on someone else's map and see like where they are coming from. So like for the example I use is, okay, you're like, you love dogs. And then you ask me, you're like, what kind of dog do you like? And I'm like, I'm not really a dog person. I don't really like dogs. So then your instinct could be, what's wrong with this guy? I don't like him because he doesn't like dogs.
He rearranges plates. And he doesn't like dogs. Like
right.
Yeah.
So you like shut down, but then a good strategy would be, well, you asked me, how come you don't like dogs? One question. And then I'm like, well, when I was a kid, I got attacked by a dog. And that laid the foundation for my fear of dogs.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Now we're open.
Yeah.
It's not shut.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that you mentioned with one of your one of the things you talked about earlier on in the show is one of your clients who was talking about the impact that this woman's like look at the cash register gave him. Like, right? If he had been like, "Hey, what's up? Are you having a bad day?" Like, she could be like, "I just got stomped on by some kid." Like, you know, like you don't know the background information, so it's just like assumption.
Yeah, or this is just my RBF. This is just my face.
Yeah.
This is just my face.
Oh, RBF, got it. Okay, so I'm from Switzerland, and those kind of things just don't make sense to me. Like, I've never gotten it. In high school, I actually got in trouble. I told the teacher, I was like something about like SOB, and she's like, "Oh!" And I'm like, "What's wrong with saying some of a bunch? Like some of a bunch of flowers?" And she's like, "That's not what that means."
I'm gonna start saying that. Some of a bunch.
Some of a bunch. Man, what I love about these two worlds is, you know, Ryan, you're diving down the rabbit hole of magic and abracadabra and these things. I've dabbled in them. And then for my belief system, I keep diving back to research and books, you know, and you know, my degree was in that. And so, but for belief systems, it really doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you do something that supports your beliefs. And I don't know, going back to the idea of nocebo, placebo, the idea is that whatever you believe, you're going to look for confirmation of that. And then that's what's going to show up in your world. So if you think the world's a bad place, you'll find confirmation. We talked about this on Facebook algorithms, Ryan. Like whatever you put on your wall is what Facebook brings back to you, whatever it is. They don't care. So their algorithm is designed in such a way that what you're putting out is what you're getting back. Only that. And life runs the same way. Like what you're putting out there is what you're going to see in your world. That's going to confirm what you hold as valuable, whatever it is.
And the thing is, like, some people believe in magic and spirituality, and some people believe in science, but everybody has a message to deliver. So whether you think it's black or white, whether you think it's gray, the person that thinks it's gray has a message to deliver to those that believe that it's gray. The person that thinks that it's black and white has a message to deliver to those that think that it's black and white. Like every single message is relevant for somebody out there. And one way is not better than the other. One
of the most important criteria to be a scientist and to be scientifically minded is humility. Like the greatest scientists in the world were humble because they realize that they don't know everything.
Yeah.
And I'm okay if I'm wrong. Yeah. I'm okay if someone else can teach me something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's like a very important component, because as soon as you start like thinking you know everything, probably not pushing yourself to learn.
Yep.
Be willing to be wrong, right? Like
you embrace being wrong. You not only okay with it, you embrace it. You're like, wow, I was wrong. Like, how come?
Yeah.
You like learn.
Interesting. I love it.
That's awesome.
My daughter's hungry. So
me too.
I'm hungry.
Yeah. I'm surprised my kids haven't come down. That my girls normally, whenever I'm on this, they're always like, "Hi."
Yeah, right.
We'd welcome them on. So
you too. Is it okay if in the future we have you back on and do some other segments and see what works and aligns for you guys?
I would love that.
Yeah.
I would love to
that was
see
fun.
I'd love to see us create an event, a live event, and have everybody come together and teach these topics in a live event, just a giant summit.
That'd be awesome.
Phenomenal.
That'd be great.
To have you guys be part of that would be cool. So
right, Nicole.
Appreciate all the work you guys are doing for people. I appreciate it. Yeah. And I appreciate you considering me and having me on the show. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Giant brothers.
Yes, thank you so much. This was such a blessing.
So much.
Yeah, so I'm glad you came on, Nicole. So that was cool.
Me too. I'm glad it worked out that the mistake ended up with me here.
Happy little
there are no mistakes.
There's not. That's what I'm saying. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And Shyam, it was so beautiful to meet you as well.
Thank you. You as well. Thanks so much.
And guys, if we can support in any way, just let us know. For everybody watching, thank you. Thanks for hanging again. We got quite a few that stayed on with us here at the after show. So thank you. Keep sharing the word, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bye.
See ya.